Hi, everyone. Hope you're having a great week so far. I know there's a few people just coming in. So today's topic is going to be all about licensing. What we like to do with our lunch and learns, if you haven't joined us for one of them yet, I'm Crystal Churcher. I am an operator myself, but also the chair for the Association of Childcare Entrepreneurs in Alberta and Canada-wide. I'm joined today by Wayne, who is one of the team members for ChildFriendly Pro, who has sponsored these lunch and learns for us, and is here to answer any kind of questions you guys might have about that software or how you can implement it into your centers. And the format usually is kind of a really quick presentation. We'll cover the topic, and then we'll leave lots of time for questions and answers. If it's not even specific to this topic today, but you just want to ask a question of another operator or someone, just even a situation or a scenario, very happy to spend time on that today. So like I said, today's Lunch and Learn is really focused around navigating licensing. This is very basic level, so great for people who are maybe new to the sector or just new to the whole licensing process, dealing with licensing inspections and non-compliances, and what to kind of expect. So that's our topic for today. We did call it survival tips for licensing for childcare operators. Not that you should feel like you're ever, having to survive in the licensing process, but it can be a bit overwhelming and sometimes unnerving when you have something happen with your license, you have a non-compliance, you run into an issue, or even just the first time that licensing officer pops up for an unannounced inspection. I know that I have felt that in the past as an operator, that little bit of shaky hands and stuff as you're going through that first inspection. But today we're going to cover understanding kind of the policy, regulations versus the act, what the difference is, and what kind of falls under each, because you are governed by both under a childcare license, what the role of a licensing officer actually is, how they can support you in their role and you in being successful and compliant in your childcare center. Some of the common areas of non-compliance, there are like 4 that seem to always kind of happen, over the term of having a license, regardless of how compliant you are. Sometimes things will just happen and things get overlooked. So hopefully we can help you avoid that today. And then a little bit of tips around compliance. And again, like I said, a lot of time to talk to Wayne, but also to have some question and answers and just open discussion at the end. So I always, if you've joined any of our association conversations in the past, you will know that we love to make sure that you understand the policy behind childcare. Childcare now is actually a funded program. We are now under government funding as a sector if you are part of the CWELC agreement. And why that matters is that the policy behind any of our funding agreements, whether it's the affordability grant or any of those programs, really can drive changes in your center and how you operate. So I just always like to point this out to people, especially if you're new coming in, why it really matters that you understand the policy. You're no longer just alone in your childcare operation. You are under government policy, and it has a direct impact on the sustainability of your center, on your eligibility and the requirements maybe for the funding, like the affordability grant program or any of the other ones that may come. And risks of non-compliance can actually really directly impact. So a lot of times to even receive grants, like the Inclusive Spaces grant that was just this last round just finished, or even your affordability grant funding, it's tied to compliance. So if you are not compliant, if you're having multiple licensing infractions or critical incidents or anything like that, you may not be in good standing with the government and you may not be able to continue to be eligible for these programs. So it's now more important than ever that you understand the policies, you understand the regulations, and you try your best to always be in compliance. So you have 2 kind of governing bodies under childcare license. One is your regulations, which I like to call the how. These are specific operational requirements. They're detailed rules and operators must follow, and they have direct implications for inspections and compliance. So when a licensing officer comes through your center, they are following the regulations. They're making sure that you're in compliance with those regulations. The Childcare Act is the why. This establishes the legal framework behind the regulations. It outlines intent and principles, and it holds broad legislative goals. So we have seen some changes in the past that are coming into effect in September, which was the act, and will have some implications on penalties that can be handed out to operators, to license holders, even to educators, if there is non-compliance and those kind of things. So very happy again to talk about those at the end and answer any questions you might have around any of the changes that are coming. So one of the first things we'll start with today is the role of licensing officers. So this role, I mean, I've been in the industry now for 14 years, and I do find that the role, in my opinion, has shifted a little bit. I know in the past, when I first started in childcare, I had a lot with my on-the-ground licensing officer. I was very fortunate to have someone that really helped me and guided me through my initial childcare license process. We have seen kind of a change. We now have something called Childcare Connect, which I'm sure if you're here today, you're familiar with, that kind of streamlines and is that first contact with you as an operator and the childcare licensing portion. But your on-the-ground licensing officer who's assigned to your file, who's your regional officer, their role and responsibility is to conduct inspections, to make sure that the children are safe in your care, that all of your requirements are followed, your health, your safety, but your regulation requirements and your program plan. They are supposed to be providing support and guidance. So if you're stuck and you have questions on, how can you provide better care, how can you support certain children that are in your center, or just different things around the actual regulation requirements for your center, you should be able to reach out to your licensing officer and get some guidance and support from them directly. Their main goal again is to ensure that regulatory compliance in your center and in your care. So it's always important to tell people that are coming in to really build a positive relationship with your licensing officer. I mean, just like working with anybody on your team, if you can have that open communication and a positive interaction, it's definitely going to go smoother. But I think something that's really important to follow and just to point out to people who maybe are new to this is that sometimes we can run into situations where licensing and you as an operator or how your program is being implemented don't align. And I think it's always important to really ask yourself and ask that licensing officer if there is an issue and something's brought up, whether that's an opinion or regulation, because you are allowed to still have control of your center. You can make business decisions around your center, and those are all outside of the child care regulations. So as long as you're following the regulations, you do still have control on how you build and implement your own program. And I think for myself, it's always been very important that my program represents, how I believe things should be in that center, how we're structured, how things are set up. As long as it's regulatory and it's meeting those requirements, you can have some ownership of how your program is structured, which may not always be of the same opinion of your licensing officer. And I know sometimes we see that around, what the curriculum is, what the framework is that you're following in your center. As long as you're meeting those needs of children and making sure that any activities, any, centers and things you have set up in your center are really at that age and developmental level for the children in your care, you should have some flexibility and ownership of what program you're following in there, what curriculum, what framework. It doesn't have to always be the same from center to center. So I think that's just an important thing. And I think if I could give you any advice, it's to know the regulations, to read them, to be well versed on them and what they look like in a practical component and everyday, day-to-day implementation. Oh my God, I can't talk. Implementation of them, because that will really help you when you do run into an issue or there's maybe a difference of opinion with your licensing officer if you understand what the regulations are. So some of the common areas of noncompliance, and I know from ACE and from some of the other things that I do outside of here, I often get the same ones where people come to me and looking for support and guidance on kind of how to make sure that they remedy these ones. So what we're going to cover today, and again, if you want to pop something in the chat or ask a question at the end if it's outside of this, very happy to cover other topics too. But we're going to talk a little bit about active supervision, ratios, transitions, and mixed age groups, medication requirements and medication forms, and administrative records and attendance. Wayne will also touch on this too, because a lot of the features of Child Friendly will also support you in compliance with these areas as well. All right. So the first one is active supervision. And I don't know if anyone here wants to share, but again, we can talk a little bit about if you've had a non-compliance around this, if you have questions about this, again, we're happy to discuss today. But I mean, active supervision is exactly as it sounds. It's actively supervising all of the children in your program, making sure that you can see everyone, which is a big one, especially if you're positioned in that outside play space or in an indoor classroom. You want to make sure that you can actually see all of the children that you're caring for. What the regulation actually says is at all times, children must be under supervision adequate to ensure their safety, well-being, and development. So some of the common pitfalls that I know when I visited centers, I've seen, I cringe every time, but cell phones in classrooms. And people looking away from supervising children to be watching a call come in or a text or something like that. If something happens during that split second that you're not supervising, you will be in non-compliance. It is very dangerous and a risk to have your staff on phones in a classroom. Again, positioning, so just always being aware of what blind spots there are maybe around you, and if you can actually see all of the children that you're watching, especially outdoors if there's play equipment, or inside if you have like even the cozy corners and stuff, sometimes just making sure you're aware of where the children are in that space. And again, with the visibility. So making sure, again, that maybe your back is, you're not having children behind you if you can't see them, and you're just being aware of your safety and the children's safety around you. And like I talked about, a real life example, so a staff member distracted by a cell phone, leading to a lapse in supervision and subsequently a non-compliance, especially if something happens in that second that you're not paying attention, and we have to go through and look at what happened and go through the incident. It's definitely going to be a big issue for yourself and for the center. So if you are a director or a supervisor, when you're looking at your classrooms and walking through your center, just making sure that your educators understand what active supervision is and how to position themselves within that space to really make sure that the children are well supervised at all times. Ratios and transitions. So this is one that we get a ton of questions around all the time too, in our chats for ACE and just in general. You do always have to maintain staff ratios. So the regulation is that staff ratios vary, as we all know, by age. And so just as an example, 1 staff to 8 children for that age group. Mixed age groups, where a group includes children from 2 or more age groups, the ratio is determined by the age of the majority of children. So this is important too if you are mixing age groups, that you understand that you may have to, ratio up if you have a majority of children that are younger than what you would normally have in that classroom or in that group. So just being very aware of the ages of the children, the mixing of groups, and this is something where Wayne can help you with, but any kind of software tool that you're using, really watching as children are being, put into classrooms and everything, that you are watching those ratios if you're mixing groups. Making sure that during transitions that the ratios aren't changing, and documenting and daily attendance and tracking. So one of the common pitfalls we see with this is just miscalculations during transitions, not tracking children's age groups accurately, and incorrect groupings causing ratio breaches. So a real life example is during a transition, a group combined unexpectedly, causing the staff to child ratio to exceed regulatory limits temporarily until noticed by licensing during an inspection. So It's always the way. If something is going to happen, it's probably going to be at a time when licensing is there for an inspection. And your licensing officer will absolutely be asking you for the ages of your children that are in the groups. They will be counting the children. They will be watching for ratios and making sure that you're compliant all the time, that they're there. And you should be following this all the time, regardless if you have a licensing officer there or inspection happening at that time. This is probably the most non-compliances I see, and people come to trying to understand these ratios. Medication forms and waivers. So this definitely comes down to documentation and just really understanding what's required, making sure that you have the original labeled container for your medication is probably number one. A lot of times, parents will repackage and it needs to be in the original container. You need to make sure that you have the records required, you have the parental consent, you have the dosage, you have everything completed that is required under regulations. If you have children with medication and you have a licensing inspection, they will definitely check. If you have children with EpiPens, make sure that you're following this too. If that EpiPen is transferring from you to parents and back and forth during the day. So just as our real life example for this one, during a licensing inspection, it was found that medication prescribed for a child was incorrectly stored in an unlocked area and administered at the wrong time due to unclear labeling and incomplete parental consent forms. So we always want to make sure medication's in a locked container, locked away, safe from children. We do need to have a log, and Wayne can help with this too, for the dosage and who's giving it and at what times, so that you are not giving it at the wrong times or with the wrong dosage. Very important, and again, definitely required by regulations and non-compliance for sure if any of this stuff is missing. Administrative records and attendance. So the regulation quote on this one is that daily attendance records must include arrival and departure times. You can do this in a variety of different ways. There's not a one size fits all. Some people do like paper sign-ins and attendance. A lot of us have moved to an electronic version of this. And again, Wayne can speak on this and how Child-Friendly can support you in this, but you do need to have administrative records in your center. You need to make sure that they are fully compliant with what's required in the regulations. Document errors for administrative records are definitely probably one of the top non-compliances. I know when I was first opening my center, some of the emergency contact information on our files was something that would be flagged in my office, and you learned fairly quickly to make sure that those things are always checked. But incomplete logs and failure to keep accurate records is a non-compliance, and your licensing officer, when they come through, will absolutely pull files to make sure that the files that they look at is kind of just a random amount of files, that they're in compliance and all the information is there, especially around emergency contacts and access to the child. So licensing inspection found multiple discrepancies in daily attendance, missing sign-in signatures and inaccurate departure times. You would get a non-compliance order, or you could get a non-compliance order. You might have to be asked to do some staff training on record keeping and even have additional follow-up inspections, depending on, I guess, how long the records were, if it was just kind of a one-day situation, or if you were just inaccurately and didn't really understand how you were supposed to be keeping records. So really important when you're setting up your administration of your center that you are fully compliant, that you know how you're tracking everything, and not only that you do, but the staff that you're training and any staff that are coming in understand the regulations as well and what's required too, because it's great if you do, but if you're not there one day and your staff are overseeing everything, you need to make sure that your center is still compliant and operating at the regulatory requirements. So some tips for compliance. I think these are pretty self-explanatory, but you should always be having ongoing staff training, making sure your policies are up to date, making sure your staff actually see what the regulations look like. Your staff can see what a licensing inspection looks like, and bringing them in to provide them with information so that they can help support your center in making sure you are always compliant. You can do staff workshops on regulations. If there is issues and you need kind of that specific training done, there are options for that too out there in the community, and we can help set you up with some links if you want. As a supervisor or as a director, daily checks to make sure that the administration, the logins, the attendance, the ratios, and everything is up to what's required for regulations. I would say probably a couple of checks at least during the day to make sure, especially if you're new and your staff are new and you're kind of just getting set up, making sure that things are always kind of being updated, that children haven't been removed or logged out if they've already left or not signed in properly. Making sure you have very clear procedures for your medication. I would say a designated person or people who are the ones that would give that medication. And this would be part of your training and onboarding, I think, especially ongoing, to make sure that people are understanding if you have a child with ongoing medication, like an inhaler, an EpiPen, like who's responsible for that and what it would look like when they would need it. Understanding the regulations is critical. I don't think I can say that possibly enough. What we do in our center is we have a copy of regulations for our staff, but also I call them like kind of a cheat sheet of regulations where we've taken the regulations and really simplified them to kind of everyday language, real life examples, so that the staff, it will click as to what it might look like in real practice. Understanding those regulations, again, if your staff doesn't understand them, you're going to run into trouble because you can't be everywhere all the time. And then reviewing and familiarizing your staff with regulations. So I think information is power, and the more informed and educated your staff can be, the better your center will be, the better the quality of care will be for all of the children that are there. And then from here on, I'm going to pass it over to Wayne. So Wayne is here again from ChildFriendly. He's just going to touch on some of the key features around what we just covered. And then we will have time for questions and just open discussion around those issues if you have anything.
I will just share screen quickly here. Thank you. Okay. Awesome. Great, thank you so much. I'm just going to briefly discuss some of the features on our platform that might help manage compliance challenges for those that might be interested in taking a look at our platform. We're constantly innovating and adapting to deal with regulatory changes, especially in the province. So yeah, first thing, attendance, our attendance feature. So with our attendance feature, as soon as a child or staff is signed in, their attendance is tracked automatically in real time. So, even for the parents using the Parents app, they're able to see the live location of their child throughout the day, as well as review their attendance logs. We also keep detailed attendance logs of all the staff and the children on our platform that you can review very easily on a regular basis. When it comes to dealing with licensing specifically, we have a report that can be pulled digitally to move away from, pulling and compiling all those paper attendance sheets that you might be used to using. With this report, you can filter for a specific date. You can filter even for a specific time of day. And then you'll be able to find the attendance log for any room, which will detail the staff and the children that were in that space, along with the ratios and whether it met the ratio requirements at that point in time. This report can be something that you can easily print and provide to your licensing officer. Yes. And then on our platform as well, just one more thing to bring out, we also make it easy to see at a glance which rooms are compliant or non-compliant, as well as let you identify which rooms have extra staff that you can even shuffle around. We provide warnings to explain why there's non-compliance on our platform, whether it be related to age groups, missing staff, or even exceeding the team size, which is something that is very Alberta specific. We, as Crystal mentioned, we automatically calculate ratios when it comes to mixed age groups that'll capture the age of the majority of the children. So you don't have to worry about those calculations. The system will automatically let you know whether that is compliant or non-compliant. Okay, for the next one. So when it comes to dealing with medication, parents are able to submit medication digitally through the app. The center staff will be able to review this medication to ensure all the requirements are met. They will fill out a form which will include all the fields that are required necessarily for licensing. Things such as being in the original container, having the name on the label, being prescribed by a physician, the amount of dosage, what times of days medication needs to be administered. And then once the medication is approved on your center side, a digital signature will also be automatically added to the medication on the file. Parents can also submit medication for, emergency or regular use. And if it was submitted for, regular use, ChildFriendly has a dashboard where your staff can review and administer medication based on the specified times throughout the day. And lastly, a little bit about our reporting. We have quite an extensive amount of reports on our website specifically to deal with pretty much everything that you need, attendance, enrollment, your finances, and also some very Alberta specific reports, to deal with the Alberta subs, previously the Alberta subsidy, now the affordability grant, and then as well as any supplemental fees requirements that you might need to provide as well. One more thing to note about our platform, if you do have a recommendation for a report that will benefit all the operators in the province, we will actually make those free of charge on the platform as well for you to use. Great, that's it on my end. Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne. Michelle, I noticed you have your hand up. Did you have a question or?
Sorry, yes. I was wondering when you were going through the regulations and which we're doing as well, but being able to share it with the staff, you said that you went through. Are we able to get a copy of that user-friendly type version of it, or do we have to just create our own?
I mean, I created my own. I'm happy to share it with you if you want. I can, what I can do is I can pass it over to Wayne and we can email it out to everyone who attended today if that works.
I would appreciate it. Yes, just
sure.
To simplify, not the intent of it, but the understanding. Yes.
Yeah, no, I found it really has helped my staff just with we've actually in my center I have the regulations in different languages as well, just to help. So if that's something that I can put my contact into the chat for you, if you'd like to reach out to me, I can send you what I have if there's a language that you think would.
Oh, that would be excellent because we run a Chinese English program. So Mandarin, Cantonese, and so if I can get it in layman's terms, then we can even translate it here.
Exactly. It just makes it so much easier for people to understand, right?
Yeah, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. I'll just put my emails in the chat. If anybody else wants a copy of that or has something like specific, feel free to send me an email.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there any other questions? Anybody have a situation around regulations or licensing that you want to vent or support on? Happy to help with that today. I'll just say, I guess we'll kind of ramble on for a few minutes before we wrap up, but I know one of the things that was a hot topic in our group chats for ACE recently was the penalties that could be coming for non-compliance starting in September, up to $10,000. A lot of people were very concerned about that. I think we should never be worried about getting penalties. We should just always be doing it right, I think, or at least intentionally doing it as well as we can and not skipping on ratios or anything. But if you are worried about that, I think having as much record keeping and just reports and making sure that you have a system in place that is you to manage it necessarily, like the features that Wayne was mentioning, is absolutely critical if we're moving into penalties and different things in the future. We want to make sure that we can prove that we have all of the compliance requirements met around medications and ratios and attendance and all of the things. And I know, like for myself, a lot of new staff are coming in who are not trained on this portion of childcare. So having as many supports in place to guide them and make sure that they're doing it right too is always helpful. Yeah, is there anybody else have any questions, anything that you would like to mention that if I missed anything, if there's compliance issues that come up for you that I didn't cover today, happy, you can put your hand up, you can put it in the chat, whatever works for you. Wayne, where can people watch these webinars after we're done? I know someone was asking that last time.
I think just shoot me an email, and then I think we can provide the link to one of these lunch and learns. Yeah. We'll also send a follow-up email after the lunch and learn as well, with Crystal's contacts as well. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Okay, well, I think, for everyone to have a little bit of time to go enjoy your lunch and have a bit of a breather before you have to go back in. Oh, Wayne's contact. Sure. Wayne, do you want to put your contact in the chat too?
Sure. Yeah. We'll include it in the follow-up email as well. Yeah.
We were just saying before we started the webinar today, Wayne was asking me kind of how, if things ever slow down in childcare, if there's ever a month where it's not crazy. I don't know for all of you. I said for myself, July is kind of the time where there's like a little bit of a breather between finishing up June and then starting again in August to get ready for the fall. Wayne is booking demos for this. If you do want to see what child-friendly looks like in real life, in real time, and you have quiet time over July or something, it would be a great time to reach out. But other than that, we will be back in 2 weeks. If there's any topics that you want for Lunch and Learns that you think, this is something that's important that I would love a little bit more information on, especially from an operator perspective, you have our email. Send us an email. I can put together a Lunch and Learn around that and make sure that we have as much information. I think we need to continue to professionalize our industry and make sure that everybody has access to all of the information and all those little tips and tricks of navigating childcare. So I appreciate everyone's time today. I hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you. Thank you, Crystal.